Good evening and welcome. Tonight we're going to be reading some articles out of History magazine. There's this great section in the back called Discoveries that goes over ancient sites and their history and then talks about how they were found in their archaeological history, the history of their digs and discoveries and things like that. Hence the name. I love this section. I've used it a bunch in other videos, and I'm glad that I have a little stockpile that I could make into one video. But I did not choose which articles were going to be in this bunch. My channel members did. These articles were chosen by Alex, Alessia, Cricket, Laura Clatworthy, Chris W., Craig, Jacob Miller, and Victoria. Thank you all for picking these. And if you, watching this, want to pick a History magazine article in the future, now's the time to join my channel memberships. YouTube says that the join button is on mobile now. So there should be a button right down there that says join that you can click to become a channel member. But if it's not actually there, you can click the very first link in the description box down below. My channel memberships are only 99 cents, US cents. It's as cheap as I can make it. And if I could make it cheaper, I would, because I don't want people paying an arm and a leg for exclusive content. I want everybody to be able to join, especially since I have so many channel members from all over the world. I know that prices fluctuate with the economy and things like that, so I don't want to set it at like $5 and then $5 winds up costing $50 in some other country, like the equivalent. So I make it as low as possible to make it as convenient for everybody. And yeah, now's the time to join because I should be getting a new issue any day now. I'll probably get it the day this video goes up, which means a few days after this video goes up, I will have a channel member exclusive video with all of the lists of articles you can choose from. So yeah, join now if you want to be able to choose articles, because that is coming up very, very soon. So without further ado, let's read these fun Discoveries articles. I try to go in chronological order. I'm pretty sure I got it, but we're going to start with Eridu, the first city of the earliest known civilization. Then we'll move on to Taxila, where Greece meets India thanks to trade. And finishing off with Sperlonga, the statues of Tiberius's grotto. Let's get into it, starting with Eridu. Fascinating place. Buried in the Mesopotamian desert, undisturbed for over 2 millennia, lay a hidden key to understanding one of the world's oldest known civilizations. In 1854, British official John George Taylor was sent on an excavation mission to the desert of southern Iraq by the British Consul General in Baghdad. Taylor, an agent of the East India Company and British Vice Consul at Basra, was commissioned with investigating a remote site called Tel Abu Shahrin, where there was a series of tells, or mounds, made up of debris left by human settlements. At first, Taylor was unimpressed. In the excavation report, published in 1855, he wrote, "My visit this year to Abu Shahrin," which she spelled wrong, "has been unproductive of any very important results." He even questioned whether it had been worth transcribing his field notes. Taylor had been hoping to uncover something impressive: statues, inscriptions, evidence of palaces and temples. What he found instead, in the short time he had available, were walls, drainage systems, stone platforms, and the remains of limestone columns decorated with mosaic cones. In his journal, Taylor highlighted finding a statue of a black granite lion lying on the surface. Even counting the lion, however, Taylor must have thought this too meager a haul to justify a second expedition. Only later would it be revealed how these unpromising mounds were the remnants of one of the oldest cities on Earth, Eridu. Before the flood. Eridu was a foundational city in Sumerian culture, the world's earliest known civilization, which flourished from around the 4th to 2nd millennia BCE in what is now Iraq. Eridu's significance is evidenced by the Sumerian king list, various versions of which were inscribed in cuneiform toward the end of the 3rd millennium BCE. The latter part of the list includes cities with royal dynasties that can be verified from historical records. The early part of the list is more legendary, recording the original royal cities that existed before the flood, an event that may reflect a regional catastrophe, or may be related to the biblical story in Genesis, where the whole earth was flooded. The first of these antediluvian royal cities was Eridu. After the kingship descended from heaven, the kingship was in Eridu, in 5 cities, 8 kings, then the flood swept over. Of immense symbolic importance, Eridu was also home to the largest temple dedicated to Enki, the god of water and wisdom, a key deity of the Sumerian pantheon. For centuries, this shrine attracted pilgrims from all over Mesopotamia to Eridu. An interest in Eden. Despite Taylor's disappointment, his initial findings piqued the interest of scholars. Although no large-scale excavations were carried out in the decades that followed Taylor's visit, officials at the British Museum remained interested in the site. In 1918, just before the end of World War I, museum officials commissioned Assyriologist Reginald Campbell Thompson to carry out excavations at the site. For a month, Campbell made archaeological surveys using Ottoman prisoners of war as laborers. The following year, British Egyptologist Harry R.H. Hall arrived with the aim of identifying the site's monumental buildings, finding the ziggurat. It was not until 1946, however, that the first large-scale excavations began. Iraq had gained independence from Britain in 1932, and the Iraqi government was keen to fund archaeological projects that might lend prestige to their nation-building narratives. At the end of World War II, the Department of Antiquities of Iraq relaunched research at the site of Eridu under the direction of Iraqi archaeologist Fuad Safar, assisted by British archaeologist Seton Lloyd. Safar and Lloyd knew each other well, having worked together at Tel Uqayr, near Baghdad. They believed that fully excavating Eridu could yield important data on the earliest phases of Mesopotamian history. They concentrated their efforts on Mound 1, an 82-foot-high tell covering an area of some 1,900 by 1,770 feet. Before long, they uncovered the remains of an unfinished ziggurat, or step pyramid, built at the end of the 3rd millennium BCE by a ruler of the 3rd dynasty of Ur, a late, short-lived Sumerian state. But what really intrigued Safar and Lloyd was what lay hidden beneath the remains of that ziggurat. City upon city. they were not disappointed. Beneath remains dating to the Ur-3, which is the 21st century BCE, the Ur-3 period, were more levels of human occupation. As they dug further, they hit a stratum dating to the Uruk period, which was 4500 to 3200 BCE. Below that were remains from as far back as the proto-historic pre-Sumerian Ubaid period, which was 5300 to 3800 BCE. As they worked, they found multiple reconstructions of the Temple of Enki, made over the course of 2 millennia, along with other places of worship. Italian Mesopotamian historian Mario Liverani writes that Eridu's temples were reconstructed and expanded after each collapse, and their remains formed a raised platform on which new temples were constructed. As the Temple of Enki was repeatedly rebuilt on the same site, its structure evolved. According to Liverani, new iterations of the temple became progressively larger from the middle of the 4th millennium BCE. These imposing buildings by far superseded anything ever built until then. Their emergence marks a transition from worshipping at home to worshipping at specially built places. In parallel with this process, there is evidence of more complex social hierarchies emerging in the city. The reconstructions of the temple stopped around 3200 BCE. A millennium later, with the brief return of Sumerian power under Ur-3, the ziggurat would be erected on the ruins of all that had gone before. More secrets. Although Eridu declined, it continued to have relevance, probably as a place of pilgrimage. Excavation of surrounding tells provided more clues to the timeline. Mound 2 contained the remains of a palace complex dating to the first half of the 3rd millennium BCE. Mounds 3, 4, and 5 contain pottery dating to the 2nd and 1st centuries BCE, but no remains from residential buildings. The city was only sparsely populated by that time. Safar and Lloyd's research was finally published in 1981. Despite the political instability of the region, Italian and French archaeologists seek to resume excavations at Eridu, the first city of the earliest civilization, and reveal more secrets. Sorry, my kitten is biting the wires of my headphones. Please don't do that. Thank you, kitten. Okay. Let's see this box up here. It says Buried Temples. In 1946, the Department of Antiquities of Iraq began work at Tel Abu Shahrain. Hey, please don't. Please don't. Leave those alone, please. It's not for kittens. There we go. Don't do that. I'm going to move you. 1 second. Oh. Your punishment is you have to go on camera. There we go. Okay. Okay. In 1946, the Department of Antiquities of Iraq began work at Tel Abu Shahrain. After a preliminary investigation, archaeologists Fuad Safar and Seton Lloyd focused on Mound 1, which, given its dimensions and based on previous excavation reports, they thought likely contained the most evidence of buildings. They opened up some trenches on the top of the mound, and as they dug further and further down, uncovered various strata containing the remains of successively older buildings. Their goal was to get down to virgin soil, and on the way document all the strata. In total, they identified 18 strata and the remains of 6 successive temples There's a photograph of that going farther and farther and farther down. Pretty amazing, right, kitten? This is Bonnie, by the way, if you didn't know. Do you want to learn more about ancient Sumer? I think that's a yes. Okay. Let's see this box. Glimpses of Eridu. Excavations at Eridu have uncovered a large number of objects spanning a wide period of Mesopotamian history. The votive cones, inscribed with details of the king and left in the foundations of monuments, date to the reign of Lipit-Ishtar in the 20th century BCE. The pottery bowls are vastly older. They were created during the pre-Sumerian Ubaid period in the 6th millennium BCE. So here we see foundation cones bearing the name of Lipit-Ishtar, king of the nearby city of Isin, from the 20th century BCE. These are really cool. I like these. I don't know. It's a nice shape. Here's the pottery bowls, dated between 6th and 5th millennia BCE, and a seal impression on a brick from the Temple of Eridu from the 21st century BCE. The kitten's trying to get in my lap. I have my heated blanket on my lap, and she loves it. 1 second. Come here, baby. Come here. You can do it. Come on. All right. While she thinks about that, let me lean over this way. Here is a little boat. Do you see? Model of a skiff from Eridu from the first half of the 4th millennium BCE. Do you think this was like a toy? A little toy boat? Toy boat, toy boat. Look at this. The city of Enki. This idealized reconstruction imagines what Eridu may have looked like at the height of its power in 3300 BCE. The city was centered around the Temple of Enki. This likely comprised an elevated platform that incorporated the remains of previous temple buildings. The sanctuary itself appears to have been quite a large rectangular structure, approximately 65 feet by 40 feet, with an elongated central chamber called a cella. There would also have been an access staircase. You can see all that here. There's my cat jumping. She went to the top of the desk, so there might be some wobbles because she's on the very tippy top. Scooch back in. Oh my gosh, now I'm making the camera wobble. Okay. So yeah. Interesting. That's the river there. But yeah, this huge temple. I'm guessing that's the Euphrates River, right? It says Passion for the East. John George Taylor had a deep interest in Near Eastern antiquities. From 1851 to 1861, he traveled around southern Iraq investigating sites, including Tel el-Mukayyar, which includes remains of the ancient Sumerian city of Ur. There's a drawing that he did of that. Archaeologists, it says, excavating the site of Eridu in 2022. So a much more modern picture here. You can see the big old tell with who knows what secrets laying underneath it as they dig and dig and dig. And then here's a little map of Iraq. There's the capital, Baghdad, and down here is Eridu, or was Eridu, I suppose. We're going to skip the little timelines at the bottom because it just repeats the article, essentially. We already know all the facts in there. So let's slide this over and read about Taxila. I hope I'm saying that right. Taxila, where Greece meets India, thanks to trade. Half an hour's drive northwest of Pakistan's capital, Islamabad, lie the ruins of Taxila. Founded around 3,000 years ago, this complex of residential and religious buildings was, for a millennium, one of the most significant centers of urban civilization in Central Asia. Largely forgotten after being sacked in late antiquity, the city's rediscovery in the 1800s awed Europeans with its blending of cultures. Taxila reflected a Central Asian tradition of creatively fusing different religions and customs, a consequence of its position on three great trading routes. Epic origins. Taxila features in the great Indian epic Ramayana. The story includes how the city is named for its founder's son Taksha, a nephew of the epic's hero Rama. Historians trace Taxila's origins to the Vedic era, the first millennium BCE, during the period when the earliest Hindu scriptures were composed. There goes my kitten jumping down. Oh, she did it very quietly. Good for her. Taxila later became a center of Buddhist culture and learning at the heart of the Gandhara region, which in the 6th century BCE had been absorbed by Cyrus the Great into the Persian Empire. Just over 200 years later, Alexander the Great toppled the Persians, beginning a period in which the Buddhist Gandharan culture fused with that of the Greek world. Following the reign of the Mauryan king Ashoka in the 3rd century BCE, the urban center of Taxila was rebuilt and later underwent 2 centuries of rule by the Indo-Greek Bactrian kingdom. Now what is she doing? I don't even see her. I think she's under the desk causing trouble. 1 second. What are you? No. No, thank you. Don't be silly. Alright, let me slide this squeaky chair back in without squishing my cat. She's right next to it. Okay. Sorry for all the interruptions, but when the baby's awake, you gotta take care of the baby. Indo-Greek Bactrian Kingdom. The city was eventually overran by the Scythians and then by the Parthians, the Romans' great enemy in the east. From the 1st to the 4th centuries CE, Taxila was rebuilt near its old site and absorbed into the Kushan Empire, whose rulers practiced Hinduism, Buddhism, and elements of the Persian religion Zoroastrianism. It stood at the lucrative meeting point of 3 trading routes, enriched by the passage of laden caravans from Western Asia, Kashmir, and Western India. In the 5th century CE, however, Taxila's ability to evolve and adapt to different conquerors came to a violent and sudden end. Sacked by the Huns, it was abandoned. It fell into ruin. My cat's trying to find more wires to chew. It's her favorite thing. I can't see her because I'd have to move my chair out again. But anyway, hopefully she stops. There we go. Excavating the past. By the second half of the 19th century, the Punjab region in which the site is located had come under the rule of yet another conqueror, the British Raj. The history and archaeology of the region was of great interest to British scholars, especially the members of the Archaeological Survey of India, or ASI, founded in 1861. Alexander Cunningham, the ASI's director, cross-referenced classical sources, including works by the 1st century Roman author Pliny the Elder and the travel writings of 7th century Chinese Buddhist pilgrim Xuanzang to pinpoint the ruins of Taxila. Cunningham carried out 2 brief digs at the site in the 1860s and 1870s, noting in his memoir that the site contained no less than 55 stupas, 28 monasteries, and 9 temples. After Cunningham's retirement in 1885, the ASI became embroiled in scandal when it was revealed that one of its members had published fraudulent claims. In 1902, the appointment of John Hubert Marshall restored the ASI's credibility. 3 urban centers. A classical archaeologist and graduate of King's College, Cambridge, Marshall had begun his career excavating at Knossos in Crete. In 1902, he took up his new post in India, implementing an archaeology training program for young Indian students. His first excavations were of centers of the Indus Valley civilization of the 3rd millennium BCE, Harappa and Mohenjo-daro, in what is now Pakistan. Marshall soon became fascinated with Taxila. He used Cunningham's preliminary notes as a basis for his own excavations at the site, which began in 1913. Work was interrupted by the outbreak of the First World War, after which the excavation resumed. Marshall's team brought to light monuments decorated with figures of the Buddha that clearly demonstrated the Hellenistic influence introduced by Alexander the Great and his successors. They recovered gold and silver jewelry, household utensils, and weapons. Marshall instigated the building of a museum in Taxila, where these remarkable finds could be housed and preserved. As the excavations continued, Marshall's team uncovered the extensive remains of streets and buildings belonging to 3 successive urban centers, each located close to one another. Few traces of pre-Persian Gandharan Taxila were found. The oldest nucleus, constructed on the Bir Mound, was founded around 500 BCE during the reign of Persian king Darius I. The streets and houses were arranged in an irregular layout, typical of villages in that part of ancient India. The second iteration of Taxila was built around 200 BCE on the banks of the nearby river, following the Hellenization of the area by Alexander the Great's conquests in the 4th century BCE. It copied the regular grid layout typical of Greek cities, with streets intersecting at right angles. At the end of the 1st century CE, the Kushan Empire created a 3rd iteration of the city at a short distance from the earlier locations. Many monuments and shrines, however, lie outside of the urban centers. Marshall excavated numerous temples and shrines in the landscape beyond the nuclei, including the Dharmarajika Stupa, first built in the 3rd century BCE by the Mauryan king Ashoka to house relics of the Buddha. The Zoroastrian temple of Jandial, which has a portico of Ionic columns showing unmistakable Greek influence, and the Kushan-era Buddhist monasteries of Moramoradu and Jalyan, lavishly decorated with stucco reliefs. The findings piqued the interest of the Prince of Wales, who was the future King Edward VIII, who visited Taxila in March 1922. Mixed together. Marshall's account of the excavations at Taxila was published in 1951. Praised for his support of Indian scholars, Marshall was also criticized for blunders in his excavation. His failure to proceed strata by strata resulted in objects from different periods becoming mixed together, complicating later excavations. Subsequent efforts have resolved these concerns and filled in some gaps in Marshall's initial theories. In 1980, Taxila was declared a World Heritage Site by UNESCO, preserving in its ruins vivid traces of conquests and trade and the fusion of cultures and religions that shaped and burnished the glory that was Taxila. Just one other little page here showing Ashoka's Great Stupa. A stupa is a mound-shaped shrine containing relics associated with the Buddha. The Great Stupa of Taxila, first built by Ashoka the Great in the 3rd century BCE, known as the Dharmarajika Stupa, named for Dharmaraja, Buddha's role as Lord of Law. Adorned with carvings of flowers and animals, it is one of the oldest surviving stupas in the world. That's pretty cool. It says it shows here panoramic view with some of the surrounding structures. The stupa was the focal point of a large Buddhist monastic complex that reached its peak during the Kushan Empire in the 1st century CE. You can see the Greek pillars here. It says with Scythian eagle motif. I guess that's right there, the eagles. One of many relics depicting the life of the Buddha near the Great Stupa. There. And the round stupa dates from around the 1st century during the Kushan period. There it is. Let's look at these artifacts on this page. They're so pretty. Melting pot of East and West. Following Alexander the Great's conquest of the Persian Empire, Taxila was ruled first by the Greek Seleucid Empire and then the Mauryan Empire, whose king Ashoka built the city's Dharmarajika Stupa for relics of the Buddha. From about 200 BCE, Taxila was rebuilt and occupied by the Bactrian kingdom, centered in what is today's Afghanistan and Uzbekistan, whose culture was heavily influenced by Greece and whose kings allowed Buddhism to flourish. In the late Roman Republic, Taxila absorbed cultural influences from the Scythians and Parthians. Later, under the Kushan Empire, the fusion of Buddhism and Hellenism, known as Gandharan style, was especially apparent and manifested in numerous sculptures and reliefs found at the site. The flow of conquerors, trade, religions, and cultural styles through Taxila was driven by the city's location on the trade routes, often combining sea and land, that linked China, India, and the Mediterranean. From 50 BCE, trade between the Roman world and the East spiked. Taxila's location near the mountain passes between Central Asia, India, and the Tibetan Plateau allowed it to benefit from the boom. So here we see a bodhisattva, it's Maitreya. The 4th century CE statue found at Taxila shows Indian and Greek characteristics, and this is in the Guimet Museum in Paris. And definitely in the face and the whole head looks very Greek, doesn't it? But not wearing Greek clothes, isn't that neat? It's a vine leaf made of beaten iron from Taxila in the Gandharan style from the 1st century CE, and it's in the Taxila Museum in Pakistan, and it's so detailed. That's amazing that they just pounded it into this pattern. It's very pretty. Now look at this. This looks like it would be in the Louvre. That's incredible. Female statue. The 1st to 2nd century CE figure is wearing a Greek-style tunic, and her stance is reminiscent of dancers in Indian art. And this is in the Taxila Museum in Pakistan. It's beautiful. The draping, very Greek. I would have said this was from Greece 100%. I would have never guessed Pakistan. This is Paterable with Greek-style figures in an erotic scene typical of Indian art from the 1st to 3rd century CE, and it's in the Taxila Museum. Yeah, what's happening here? It looks like there's a cherub. You can see their wings. And these two people having a good time maybe. With it looks like a Zeus figure over there, and then there's a big old boar. There's a lot happening in this bowl. And look at this beautiful piece of jewelry down here. Gandharan-style two-piece pendant found at Taxila from the 1st century CE. I bet it's very jingly. It's so pretty. And this says, digging a hole. John H. Marshall was an enthusiastic excavator at Taxila in the early 1900s and liked by his Indian colleagues. His successor, Mortimer Wheeler, however, criticized Marshall's failure to dig strata by strata. He does have a point. You shouldn't just dig willy-nilly. His method mixed items from different chronologies together, an act Wheeler wrote of technical incompetence. And it says this is Marshall's family and the Archaeological Survey of India staff in this photograph here. And look how beautiful this is. Ruins of the 2nd century CE Aulian Buddhist monastery, part of the monumental complex in the site of Taxila in Pakistan. You can tell that this was a Buddha, and this was a Buddha. But, you usually don't see the Buddha with all this beautiful draped cloth, right? It's usually like a solid body. I'm thinking of the big gold statues in Thailand and stuff. You don't see him wearing a shirt. So that's pretty neat. Beautifully done. Such neat architecture. And then here's our map. Here's Pakistan. You can see the capital Islamabad, and Taxila is not too far off from it, is it? It's very nearby the capital city. Moving on to the last article about Sperlonga, statues of Tiberius's grotto. This is a really neat story. Steeped in wealth and opulence, Roman rulers had many private luxuries. During the first part of his reign, Emperor Tiberius extended a pleasure palace at Sperlonga on the coast midway between Rome and Naples. Set back from the beach, the original villa was magnificent enough. But what really dazzled guests was the feature at the center of the complex, a vast grotto that opened onto the Mediterranean. Tiberius had the floor of the grotto turned into a circular pool. Sculptural groups, based on the life of the hero Ulysses, adorned the cave's interior, some placed on a platform in the water, others in galleries in the rock face. Beyond the grotto's mouth, Tiberius had an open-air rectangular pool carved into the beach. In the middle of this pool was an islet on which the emperor would hold banquets for his friends. The discovery. In 26 CE, part of the grotto collapsed. 2nd century historian Suetonius recounts that as Tiberius was dining near Terracina in a villa called the Grotto, many huge rocks fell from the ceiling and crushed a number of the guests and servants, while the emperor himself had a narrow escape. Tiberius was saved by his confidant Sejanus, a prefect of the Praetorian Guard, who used his body to shield the emperor. After the accident, Tiberius left the villa and moved to Capri. But the villa was in use until the 8th century, after which it fell into disuse and was repurposed as a nymphaeum. As the centuries passed, stories emerged of people finding the remains of sculptures in Tiberius's grotto. But it was not until the middle of the 20th century that formal archaeological excavations were carried out. In 1957, construction work began on a highway to link the cities of Terracina and Gaeta. The route would pass close to Sperlonga, so the government commissioned archaeologist Giulio Jacopi to carry out an investigation of the cave. During an initial inspection on August 23rd, Jacobi noted the cave contained fragments of ancient sculptures. A few days later, Jacobi received a visit from the director of the roadwork, engineer Erno Bellante. Bellante told him he was passionate about archaeology and offered to help in the research by whatever means he could. Jacobi assigned him some sites near the new road, but this was not enough for the archaeology-loving engineer. Familiar with what the classical sources said about the presence of Emperor Tiberius in Sperlonga, and without informing Jacobi, Bellante began excavating the cave. The marble fragments he found clearly belonged to Roman sculptural groups. Under a layer of earth and sand in the center of the grotto, he found evidence of a structure. A week later, without consulting Jacobi, Bellante informed the archaeological authorities, we'll look at that in a minute, of his findings. When Jacobi heard the news, he was furious at what he considered the intrusion of an unauthorized excavator and quickly took back control of the project. The fragments unearthed by Bellante suggested that the artifacts hidden in the cave would be highly significant, but Jacobi made errors of interpretation. One piece of marble bore an inscription mentioning the Greek sculptor Agasander. Jacobi seized on this and claimed that among the Sperlonga statues was nothing less than the original of the Laocoon sculptural group, made famous by the copy discovered in Rome in 1506. Jacobi's hypothesis would soon be disproved. More trouble was in store for Jacobi. When he attempted to take the statue fragments to Rome, the people of Sperlonga united to prevent what they considered to be a heist. One newspaper described how residents of Sperlonga threw balls of mud at the workers who would come to collect the artifacts. An arduous task. In the end, the Italian authorities decided that the finds would remain in Sperlonga. Once all the fragments, some 6,000 in total, had been collected, restoration work began to reconstruct the statues and ascertain their original state. This momentous task was carried out by archaeologist Baldassare Conticello and sculptor Vittorio Moriello. Following much painstaking work, they pieced together, at least in part, 4 sculptural groups that decorated the grotto. I'm getting sleepy. Decorated the grotto in the time of Tiberius. The locals of Sperlonga, suspicious of interference from Rome, ultimately got their wish. Since 1963, the restored groups have been on display in the National Archaeological Museum of Sperlonga, alongside Tiberius's beachside grotto. Isn't that a nice ending? Always follow your passions and keep things where they belong. That's the moral of that story. The circular pool of Tiberius's grotto was once dominated by massive sculptural groups. Beyond it is the rectangular pool, in the middle of which lies the islet where Tiberius had his banquets. You can see the pool here, which I'm sure had statues all around it, and probably in it, up there. And then this had a little table where they'd have their parties. It's a pretty neat spot. It's too bad that it ended in disaster. It says Palladium, figure from the cult dedicated to Pallas Athena, and this is in the Sperlonga Museum. You can see Zeus's hand there holding up a little Athena, born fully formed from his head. Let's see this big page here. Scenes from the story of Ulysses. Tiberius entrusted the decoration of his grotto at Sperlonga to 3 sculptors from the School of Rhodes, Athenodorus, Agisander, and Polydorus. Their signatures appear on the ship of the Scylla group, by showcasing the Greek hero Odysseus, otherwise known as Ulysses in Latin. Tiberius was celebrating his own aristocratic lineage of the gens Claudia, which was believed to be descended from Telegonus, son of Ulysses and Circe. So let's look at this, Ulysses and Polyphemus. It says, a monumental sculptural group depicting Ulysses blinding the Cyclops Polyphemus was placed in a large cavity at the back of the grotto. It has a pyramidal structure. Ulysses, right here, appears at the top, grasping a wooden stake near one end and directing its sharpened tip toward the Cyclops' single eye. It's wearing a little cap, too. 2 companions, you can see what's left of them here, positioned lower down, hold the stake steady. Most of Ulysses' body has been preserved, and the splendid bearded head wearing a pileus or brimless hat is considered a masterpiece of ancient art in its own right. It's a nice hat. A 3rd companion over here, whose face wears a terrified expression, holds a goatskin containing wine they had offered to the Cyclops. Right there. Let's see what it says. This epoxy resin reconstruction of the Polyphemus group was made on the basis of the preserved marble fragments. In the case of the Cyclops, these were limited to the head, a leg, a foot, an arm, and a hand. The resin is on display with the marble in the National Archaeological Museum of Sperlonga. I feel like, let me see, because I feel like I saw a picture of, maybe I Googled it or something, like what it actually looks like just the pieces of the Cyclops. I feel like I saw that somewhere, but it's not in here apparently. I guess not. I feel like I looked it up or something. Oh, okay. I must have Googled it. Let's see this one. Confronting Scylla. Another sculptural group was found in a more fragmented state and has been only partially reconstructed. It originally depicted Ulysses and his companions, down here it says, what's left of them, aboard his ship the moment they are attacked by Scylla, where's Scylla? Right here. A monster with a woman's torso that has not been preserved. With her right hand, Scylla grasps the head of a helmsman. Oh, I see. Scylla's not there. This is the helmsman. Plunging overboard. I see. There's his body. There's his arm. I see. There are traces of color still visible on his lips and eyes. Scylla's body had eel-like tails at the back, which I guess that's preserved, which wrapped around 2 of Ulysses' companions, and dog heads, you can see that right there, protruding around her groin, which snared several others. That's probably a really cool statue. It's too bad it's all crumpled up. Let's see what this says. Oh no, I already read that. Goodness. This made me so sleepy. I hope it made you sleepy too. It says a famous cave. The villa at Sperlonga predated Tiberius's rule. It was built sometime in the 1st century BCE. Historians once believed that it belonged to Tiberius's great-grandfather, but it is now known that this theory is erroneous. The grotto was a central feature in the town's history. Spelunga, the Roman name for Sperlonga, means cave. And how great is that? Because when you go caving, you go spelunking. So they called the town was Spelunka. They call it spelunking after this cave. That's wild. That's so interesting. I never thought about what the word spelunking means. It's named after this cave in this town. That's pretty cool. So here's the palace all zoomed out. An aerial view of the Sperlonga site shows the ruins of Tiberius's villa, the grotto mouth, and the pool cut into the beach. So yeah, there's the cool pool. The cool pool. And then there's the dining area, I'm guessing, right there. And then there's the cave. Looks like there's a little cave right there too. And if we look at the map, there's Italy, there's Rome and Naples, with Sperlonga almost in the middle of them along the coast there. So that is it for tonight. Thank you so much for watching. Sorry for all the kitten nonsense. She's settled down somewhere, but I have no idea where she went. But anyway, thank you again for watching. And remember, if you want to choose an article for History Magazine, sign up now. Don't wait, because we're going to pick articles very, very, very soon. So you can click the join button down below or click the first link in the description box. And thank you again to my channel members who chose these articles. Everyone else in the comments, thank them too. I hope that you found this video to be relaxing and educational, and I hope that you have a good